Hey, everybody, welcome to the Prep for Life podcast. This is your founder and CEO of Glam Girl Bikini, Amy Anger, today with my fabulous co-host, Leemarie Hossetter. Hey, Lee.
Hello, it's so good to be back.
Yes, sorry, I have a cough drop in my mouth and
Oh no,
I kind of, I kind of like botched that, but we are here.
weather is changing, guys. Weather is changing. Make sure you're drinking your water and taking your vitamin C.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we are doing part two today. Tips on how to keep motivated.
Mhm.
So these are not your ordinary motivational tips, I think, but I feel like from the first episode, we got a lot of good feedback in terms of just tangible things to just try to stay on track more than anything. Or to live out the prep life in the best way that you can. I don't know. What is a good way of just describing that?
Well, I don't know about that, but I know that I think this episode is timed really well. I think this time of year, it
Yeah.
is really important to learn how to work on your motivation as a skill and to understand the skills that you can put into place, which are these are practical skills that you can put into place to keep your motivation because end of the year, holiday season, it's sometimes easy to kind of just fall off, especially as the weather changes and you're stressed about, school and end of the year things and all that holiday stuff. And it's easy to put off, hey, I'll start January 1st or I'll get back on track next year. When really what we want to do at the end of the race is we want to get that last pick and we want to sprint to the finish. And these skills help us keep up our motivation and keep up our momentum. I think end of the year goals are amazing. And so we just have a few more tips
Yeah,
on
it's like a finish
practical ways.
strong, finish
Yeah.
your 2024 strong type of
Amen.
thing. Yeah.
Oh,
So we went over tips 1 through 8, and now we're starting on tip number 9, and
no.
that's just know what to control. So when you get stressed, it's really easy to just feel like you have lack of control and you're trying to exert control in a situation where you actually don't have control. It is an uncontrollable situation. So I think identifying situations in like, hey, these are the things that I can control. These are the things that are out of my control. So I need to kind of let that go and make sure that we're not obsessing about that lack of control, that we're just really focusing on the things that we do have control over, such as our behaviors, the
Mhm.
choices we make, our mindset. And then I think that that can just say, like, if you just kind of like when it hits, when you feel overwhelmed, say, like, right now, what is
What?
actually within my control
Mhm.
and what is not, and just kind of like deciphering that. And I think that just cuts through the clutter, helps you open your mind, and then you can kind of discover those perspectives and solutions that maybe you weren't seeing before. Um, do you have any tangible examples of this where you feel like there's a situation and you're like, okay, these are the things that I can control and prep. These are the
Yeah.
things that can't, and I've got to let go of those.
I mean, I do from a coaching perspective. And I think from a coaching perspective, it's really important to try and give my athletes the most control that I can. I think for a lot of
Mhm.
people, having a strict meal plan or a strict regime for prep, even though they understand it, if they kind of feel like they don't have control over anything, giving them as much, like giving them macros when I can and letting them know the choices that they can do, giving them options for their cardio, things like that, I think are really helpful when they're just need to practice controlling their situation. I know food is a big one for especially women, being able to control their food. And a lot of the time we do that by under eating. If it's a control issue, I've noticed that a lot. But understanding your body and what is actually within your control and not it's not always results. It's not always the scale that's in your control, but hitting your macros, getting those on target and on point is something that you can control and it's something that you can take pride in. So things like that, hitting your water and supplements and stuff like that, I've really noticed. the more choices, the more education that I can give my clients, the more they feel like they have in their control. And that helps them a
Yeah.
lot.
And that's actually point number 11 is give
I
choices.
know, but
So
it's
you're
been
kind of
so
skipping ahead.
well. Do you want me
Yeah.
to just touch
So,
it?
well, real quick before we,
Yeah.
diverge from the control part. Um, so when I think about this and I think about like any situation that comes about, I think about schedule and the amount of time that a person has. There's certain things that you do not have control of. Like if you have a job that you have to be there at a certain time, that is something that you don't have control over. However, like let's say you have a break, what you do during your break, you have control of that. What you do before you go into work, how early you wake up, you do have control of that. What you do after work, rather than sitting on the TV, like you could be walking on the treadmill and watching TV or something like that. Um, so I think a lot of times if we do these audits, we have to be really real with ourselves and what we actually, I think we have a misunderstanding. Like sometimes we feel like, oh, I have to do these things. Like I have to clock in at this time. But like, do you get a lunch break? Okay. Could it be a walking lunch break and, like you eat at a different time? I mean, there's always creative ways to get around things and to sneak like movement in or different tasks that need to be done. So I think it's just shifting that perspective after you do that audit, especially with time. In my opinion, at least that's what's really real for me right now with prep is like thinking about my family's schedule, the non-negotiables, and kind of like prioritizing the things that have to be done, and then like kind of coming up with creative ways on like how I can integrate prep into that activity so I can be double dipping. Like if I'm at my daughter's volleyball game and I really want to be there to watch her, but at each break, if I run, like do a sprint to the bathroom or to the water fountain or something, I'm getting steps in,
Mhm.
and I'm getting up and I'm moving. And I know that sounds like really petty, but those things really add up over time. And I think that if you're constantly trying to think about like what time slots, where can you fit in some extra things that you didn't think were possible? I think it all starts with looking at your schedule first, very realistically, and giving yourself a category of what I can control and what I can't control, and what I do at that time is huge.
I love that. That's amazing. And that's like a really good testimony to, I mean, you have a full-time job, you have two kids that are in all sorts of activities and sports. You have a husband and a household to take care of. Plus, you are doing a podcast that's pretty popular in the bikini world and then running your own business. So I mean, the amount of plus personal training on the side, every once in a while, so the amount of hats you hold while also finding time to prep, I think the reason that you think about schedule is that's your top
That's my
priority.
life. Yeah, that's
That's
my
your
life right now.
life. And I
Yeah.
mean me, I'm like single as a Pringle, like just trying to like the schedule is definitely like I still need to schedule. I still have
Yeah, because you
jobs,
have
but
work,
it's not
multiple
it's
jobs.
not as high in on my mind all the time because I know I'll
Right.
find time for things versus things like choosing my foods. That's on my mind a little bit more, and it might be lower on your priority because for you. But no matter what is your obstacle, you can find a way with finding creative ways on what you can control. You can find a way to prep. You can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's just like running errands to go get food, or like if you don't have food prepped, or thinking about some time that you can put in to dedicate to meal planning and prepping. Like those are all things that, I kind of went on a tangent on number nine. We'll probably never get anywhere, but maybe if we double
Well,
up like we just did with 11.
Well,
Do you want to take
we
10?
already went. So 10 is that the keep in mind? Keep in
Yep.
mind that all behavior is an attempt to solve a problem, even if it seems destructive. So if let's say you struggle with something like compulsive overeating, finding the root of that, this is something I love to do with my clients because because overeating is the result of something and it's a problem. So finding that the problem, the root of the problem that this is attempting to solve, not only
Hmm.
changes their perspective of just this is a bad behavior and I don't understand why I keep doing this and I just need to be better. That's our reaction often,
Right.
but finding the actual reason, are you getting enough calories in general? Is your calorie deficit too low? So that your body, your brain is just giving you all of these crazy cravings that you're not understanding how to, and what are you craving? Is it specific? Are you nutrient dense in a certain nutrient or vitamin or mineral that we need to look into? Are you, pacing out your meals, spacing them out? Are you having protein at every meal so that you're staying full? Or do you have high volume? Any destructive, quote unquote, destructive or negative behavior, look back at the root of the problem that behavior is trying to solve, because it
Hmm.
all goes back to basically our brain and our body and the I mean, it's like feast or famine. It's like it's survival mode, and our
Yeah.
brain is always trying to protect us. Our body's always trying to protect us, and trying to lose weight is actually stressful on the body, even though it is healthy long term. It's stressful on the body to force it to burn body fat, because your brain doesn't tell the difference between, body fat that gets to an unhealthy level and body fat that it's just putting on to save 4 times of famine. And
Mhm.
so learning why we have those, I mean, just using the overeating,
Yeah.
why do you have that? Where are you putting yourself at, the times where you struggle with overeating? Can you change your route home from work? Can you have a healthy snack in the car so you're not hungry on the way home from
Hmm.
work? Do you have dinner prepared? Can you go on a walk instead of watching TV? What are you watching? A big thing for me is like, am I watching Food Network a little too much on a diet? Do I need to start watching like the CrossFit games or something else? And so just kind of know the places that you need to maybe stay away from and the more healthy habits, and just how to, create new behaviors that promote the behavior that you want to see.
Yeah, and I think basic human function, we have a protective mode where, in this particular example, they give the idea of like stress eating. And so it's not actually that you are wanting to overeat, you're trying to like soothe yourself,
Mm-hmm.
with that dopamine rush of overeating. And really, like you said, the root problem is the stress. So identify the stress, talk to a therapist, do self, help type of techniques and self-care. Maybe it's that you just need more sleep and you need to allot for a better sleep schedule. So
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, that's what I had to do this weekend is I like had to get more sleep. Um, I
Yep.
I mean, when you're tired, you're gonna overeat. It's very likely. It's much more likely than if you're well rested. You're not gonna make the same decisions that you would when you're overly tired.
And there's a reason for that. It's
Yeah.
because your brain is asking for immediate energy.
Yep. And
That's why
glucose.
you're
Yeah.
craving things like sugar and salt at late at night when you really just need to go to bed. But
Hmm.
some of us, I mean, give yourself a little grace, or at least just understand it. Like if you have to do some work, or if you have to, like you and I, we were out of town at a show, and we we
Hmm.
had we had to be up later than usual. I mean, we both had to be back at work on Monday. And so just understanding that that is why we have those cravings. And it's not necessarily that you're bad. It's just that your brain is craving instant energy, which is going to be more the sugary, salty, snacky type foods that are low in
Hmm.
fiber and higher in calories.
Absolutely. And did you want to finish your thought on number 11 with the
Oh, sure. With choices. I
emphasize your
mean,
choice? Because
yeah,
I didn't want to like break your chain of, but I
no,
also
that's
didn't
so
want to
good.
like give up on
The
the first
control,
one.
that was really good. Yeah. So choices, I think, is really whatever you can give yourself choices. They actually even apply this to doing macros or a meal exchange. That is how I always, I think I've only once wrote a meal plan for someone, and it was because she was just so busy that she just said, tell me exactly what to eat and I'll eat it. And it was just not a priority for her at that time. But mostly I will either give macros, and then I will recommend, hey, get 80% of your proteins from these sources. Or I will do a meal exchange with macros, which gives many choices. The more
Hmm.
choices you can make, the more you feel more in charge, and
Hmm.
it just helps. It's like when you're a kid and your parent tells you exactly what to do versus giving you a choice. You just want to rebel. And so I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, even though we understand prep and we understand that we need to trust our coach, the more that the coach can give us choices, not only with nutrition, but also with like exercise, like cardio choices, like you can do this or this. I know that I loved that when you would do that for me, Amy, because um, although 95 to 97% of the time I'm on the Stairmaster, if I have that choice one day that I can do incline walking instead or something, like it just helps you when you get to a point where you're like, I am so burnt out. I don't know if I have the mental energy to do anything, but switching it up a little bit
Yeah.
helps so much.
Yeah, I know as like a busy mom and wife and all that, like with a lot of responsibilities, it's really nice to get the choice like how I want my deficit too.
Oh
And
yeah.
I try
Yep.
to pass that on to my clients,
Mm-hmm.
even no matter how busy they are, even if they like, this is a full-time gig for them that they can just like spend all the time on prep. Like I think it's really valuable to have buy-in, and it empowers the client, and it allows them to be part of the process of decision making because at the end of the day, the law of thermodynamics is the same. Like a
Yeah.
deficit's a deficit. If you're getting it from a lot of movement, let's say, I have one of my clients, like she's just about to start a job, but she hasn't started it yet. And so she's like, I have so much more time. So she's like, I'd rather eat more calories and just move more because
Mm-hmm.
I have like a lot of time on my hands. And, if I'm bored, I'm going to kind of like want to be eating. And so she's like, I'd rather just move, and then I'm like the opposite. Like I just don't have enough hours in the day. So I would rather keep my deficit really low from my nutritional standpoint and do less movement. So I
Mm-hmm.
think in every season it's been different for me. So I just think it's important as a coach to give those options to clients, and I think they appreciate that. Um so as far as embracing feedback even when it's negative, that's our next point. And I think that with that, um we just have to make sure that we're not trying to have that filter of like, okay, I only want feedback like when it's on my terms and like when it's comfortable. Like sometimes we just need somebody to be like completely upfront and honest with them. I know I appreciate like a very direct approach. And if I'm missing the mark, like I kind of want to like have myself be called on it. And I think that's the importance of a coach is like you do want that accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And we're homeostatic creatures where we are going to unnatural, like it's just not natural for us to try to pick the path of most resistance. We're going to try to like be balanced
Yeah.
in life. And so I think that it's important to, you know, kind of get past that whole thing where you don't want to hear like the bad stuff. But actually, I would try to seek that stuff out and try to get feedback from people that you care about or that like a coach, a mentor, a judge, like people that are going to be able to give you something that you can actually tangibly apply and that
Mm-hmm.
it's quality feedback. So make sure it's coming from a good place,
Mm-hmm.
and it's someone that you trust. But I think that if you seek that out, the more you can try to better yourself. I always say that like I work harder on myself than anyone else because I want to be the best version of me so that I can pour into other people. So, not just as an athlete, but like as in all facets of my life. So I think it's important. Like feedback is a gift, and I think if we see it that way, even if it sometimes can like hurt a little bit, in the sport we kind of have to be like a duck's back, with water on the back, and just kind of like let it fly off of us.
Yeah. I mean, we're literally getting on stage in a bikini asking judges to critique our bodies.
Yeah,
Like, you have to be very secure to do that. And we
yeah,
treat it like a sport, and it really is character building. I do
yeah,
think so. So
absolutely.
then the next point is set and figure out expectations, which for prep and off season, I think, or improvement season, like both equally, having expectations as like with your coach for your prep or for your improvement season is massive. It is one of the top most important things, I think, because how are you going to make progress if you don't know what's expected of you long term and the day-to-day expectations week to week, month to month to
Yeah.
make those improvements and to fill out your prep. And so, and then thinking about what your expectations, but then also they talk about anticipating failure. And so looking ahead through that improvement season or through that prep and thinking, well, what if this happens? What you have a vacation here, you have a trip here, anticipate times that might be hard to stick with the plan and come up with plans, ahead of time and figure out expectations for those times or backup plans. And then learning, they're just emphasizing learning from your failure, always learning to build um, and learn and grow and do better next time. But I think having clear and set expectations at the beginning of either a prep or an improvement season is massively helpful.
Yeah, and I never think of things as a failure. I just think of it as an opportunity to learn. And
Mhm.
I think that sometimes we experience setbacks that we weren't expecting, but there's always a reason for it. There's always an opportunity to become better, to grow from that experience. And
Mhm.
so, along with those lines, our next point here that Precision Nutrition so eloquently put together for us is never stop experimenting. So, I think that when you can just always think of yourself as your own lab rat. And, it's important to be consistent with how you collect the data on your physique and how you're analyzing it and having a good coach that understands what to do with that data, how to draw like a conclusion from the data. How do they, you know, do they just take your weight, your measurements? Do they do pictures? Do they have a journal where they're talking about like cycle, digestion, wins for the week? Like there's so many factors that can play a part in just like the scale changes,
Mhm.
right? So we need to be able to decide what to do and hire, which basically is our next point, is hire and recruit a team of people that are in your corner, but that are also going to be knowledgeable enough to help set you up for the best success. So with, these experiments, trying new things, I think literally I've seen with all of my athletes, we always take different approaches depending on what season they're in. But also just even just like lean out phase is usually different. And we're trying different techniques and things are always evolving. And I think just embracing that experiment mindset and being open to doing things a little bit differently. Um, they say if you continue to keep repeating the same patterns over and over again, that's you're not going to really get anywhere, right? So, um, in the uncomfortable is where we start to grow and in bodybuilding and in life. So it's important to do that.
I love that. And the last point of recruit a team, you touched on it already, but do you need, you have your coach, obviously. Do you need a posing coach as well? Do you need a trainer to meet you at the gym or a training partner that can meet you at the gym? I have a handful of people that I love working out by myself and I do very well just putting my headphones in and grinding. But I do know there are some days where it's like, I'm gonna sit on my phone because I'm so exhausted. So I need somebody to kick my butt and like go back and forth with me in these sets. And I have a handful of people that I can recruit to come meet me at the gym. Do you need someone to help you pick out a suit or heels? Do you need somebody to help you with your stage, with backstage or your hair and makeup, like all of those things, recruiting your team. I know I used a meal prep lady for a while who specialized in prep for bodybuilders and she did macros and very clean meals and things like that. So I think the bigger you can recruit your team and the more excellent people you have on your team that you can pull from, the stronger you're going to be during a prep and an improvement season.
Yeah.
I mean, you even mentioned like a therapist, somebody, a mindset coach, somebody that can help you from that, or a mentor, somebody like from that end, I think would be helpful.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter what season you're in,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you always need the accountability. You always need feedback. Like whether you're growing or you're leaning out, it's or trying to do both. I mean,
Yeah.
you need people constantly giving you feedback, an outside eye. And I think that that really helps with motivation, and kind of always keeping some sort of goal. Um, and that goal will probably always evolve into different things throughout. But I think it's just important to stay motivated, and having that like driving force of, constant improvement. Like, where is that going? What are you
Mm-hmm.
going to do? And
Hmm.
who are you going to employ to help you get there?
Hmm.
Because we can't do things on our own. Like, you can be successful, you can move, but you're going to move a lot faster if you have a team of people,
Hmm.
helping you. So, all right, with that, we have concluded our episode on finding your motivation. And hopefully, you can finish this season strong, whether you're in improvement season or you're getting ready for one of those last minute shows here at the end of the season. So, you can find us on Instagram at Prep Life Podcast or at Glam Girl Bikini, and you can apply for coaching with Lee Marie or I at glamgirlbikini.com by hitting the Get Started button. Thanks for listening, guys.